Take one of these things. So let me tell you how this happened. Last time we were here, I said to Doug, crazily, you know, everybody's supposed to be like a rubber band. At some point you have to be stretched in order to be used. So if you ever need me to speak, let me know. He said, you got the next one. I was like, dang, I didn't think it was going to be that fast. Anyway, so here I am. A little bit about me. My name's John. I am originally from Albany, Georgia, down in the south of Georgia. So I'm a good old country boy that tries not to live like it as much as I can. But that is my root, for sure. A little thing about me. Valerie's had to hear this a lot because I told her that I was going to say this. I'm a comedian. I'm a part-time comedian. And what that means is I don't stand up on stage and I don't get paid. My comedy shows happen in my car, and my audience is whoever happens to be riding with me. So, just a little icebreaker there. How much does a polar bear weigh? Enough to break the ice. So, so today what we're really going to be talking about, I've been toying with this idea for ever since last time we were here about what to talk about. And it was like instantly, I knew exactly what I was going to talk about, but I had no idea where I was going to get it from. So I played around with a lot of things and finally ended up, I think God revealed this to me. So kind of the title of this, I guess, would be Hypocrisy to Humility. So we're going to kind of think through how we treat others tonight. So in John chapter 8, starting in verse 2. At dawn, he went to the temple again, and all the people were coming to him. He sat down and began to teach them. Then the scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman caught in adultery, making her stand in the center. Teacher, they said to him, this woman was caught in the act of committing adultery, and the law of Moses commanded us to stone such woman. So what do you say? They asked this to trap him in order that they might have evidence to accuse him. Jesus stooped down and started writing on the ground with his finger. When they persisted in questioning him, he stood up and said to them, the one without sin among you should be the first to throw a stone at her. Then he stooped down again and continued writing on the ground. When they heard this, they left one by one, starting with the older men. Only he was left. With the woman in the center. When Jesus stood up, he said to her, woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? No, Lord, she answered. Neither do I condemn you, said Jesus. Go, and from now on, do not sin anymore. So some things that just as I was reading this that popped out to me. Number one, this woman was caught by the Pharisees in the act of adultery. Maybe the Pharisees weren't somewhere they should have been. So this would be like if I went to a party on Saturday night, saw Peyton at the same party, Peyton's doing stuff he shouldn't be doing, I go to the pastor Sunday morning and say, hey pastor, I saw Peyton at this party on Saturday night doing all of this stuff. And he's going to say, how do you know that? Well, because I was there. Why were you there? Great question, because I probably shouldn't have. So, this whole idea of as the Pharisees were catching this woman, maybe they were doing something that they shouldn't have been doing. And then I think the funny thing is Jesus' response, because he doesn't have one. They ask him this question, and he stoops down and starts writing in the sand, so he doesn't answer that question. Who knows what he was writing? Maybe it was the name of the person that did it. And then the crazy thing that I think throws all of this out of whack from what everybody at this time was thinking was whenever he says, woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? No one, Lord, she answered, neither do I condemn you. So the Pharisees actually were correct. In the Levitical law, Leviticus 20:10 says, if a man commits adultery with a married woman, he commits adultery with his neighbor's wife. Both the adulterer and the adulteress must be put to death. So the Pharisees in this situation were correct based upon their law. This woman deserved to die. However, Jesus flips this whole script, and being a Jew himself, completely negates the Levitical law and says, no, now we're going to live under my law. Now we're going to live under what I have come to do, which is to set free all of those who are condemned. So I think a lot of times in the story, we either look at ourselves as two people, we look at ourselves as the woman, and we say, I'm a sinner and I have done all of this stuff wrong, and yet Jesus still does not condemn me. Or we look at ourselves as Jesus and say, I try to help people as much as I can. But I think we need to look at the Pharisees as ourselves in this story. Just because somebody else that we see is sinning, why should we throw them at the feet of Jesus with condemnation while we have our own struggles as well? So Matthew 7, 1 through 5 says, do not judge so that you won't be judged. For you will be judged by the same standard with which you judge others, and you will be measured by the same measure you use. Why do you look at the splinter in your brother's eye, but don't notice the beam of wood in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the splinter out of your eye, and look, there is a beam of wood in your own eye? Hypocrite. First take the beam of wood out of your eye, and then you will see clearly to take the splinter out of your brother's eye. So, kind of a modern twist on this. I know beam of wood sticking out of the eye is really weird. So I think of it kind of like this. I think of it as, why are you going around trying to put Band-Aids on everybody's paper cut when you have a gashing hole in your arm? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. First, why don't you get some stitches and go to the hospital or something before you start trying to fix everybody else's minor little problem? I heard one of my professors actually said this the other day, and I thought it was very interesting with a lot of things coming out about pastors who are caught doing things that they don't need to do and that kind of stuff. We want to just write them off, say they're terrible. And my teacher said, Christians are the only army that shoots their wounded. That when people are down, when people sin, we're the ones that come by and just drive them further into the ground rather than picking them up and say, hey, it's okay, you did wrong, but I still love you. So, now we have the opposite. What is a real Christian supposed to look like? I think the answer is in John 13. So, starting in verse 1, before the Passover festival, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Now when it was time for supper, the devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, Simon Iscariot's son, to betray him. Jesus knew that the Father had given everything into his hands, that he had come from God, and that he was going back to God. So he got up from supper, laid aside his outer clothing, took a towel, and tied it around himself. Next he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet and to dry them with the towel tied around him. When he came to Simon Peter, who asked him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Jesus answered him, what I'm doing you don't realize now, but after you will understand. You will never wash my feet, Peter said. Jesus replied, if I don't wash you, you have no part with me. I love Peter's almost complete switch here. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not only my feet, but also my hands and my head. One who is bathed, Jesus told him, doesn't need to wash anything except his feet, but he is completely clean. You are clean, but not all of you. For he knew who would betray him. This is why he said, not all of you are clean. So, what is the significance of foot washing? I'm pretty sure nobody's in here is going to come up here and wash my feet. I got some stinky feet. Just saying, as I'm sure some of you probably would do as well. I'm not just putting this on me. But, however stinky my feet are, probably has nothing in comparison to how stinky the disciples' feet were. So you have to think that they're walking down this dirt road with their chacos on, and their chacos are getting sweaty, and the dirt's sticking to the sweat, and now it creates this muddy, slimy, gritty, nasty mess on their feet, and they have to wash it. So I'm pretty sure nobody signed up for that. I'm not, I promise. But I think furthermore, not only is it the act of washing the feet, but the person that was supposed to wash the feet before they were to eat was actually not a Jewish slave, but a Gentile slave. Because Jews were too good to wash the feet of anybody. So it was a Gentile slave. So you think of Jesus, who was a Jew, coming in, saying, no, I'm going to take the lowest absolute position, not only of a Jewish slave, but even worse than that of a Gentile slave. Somebody that we see as dogs. We can think about the story of the Good Samaritan, where basically the Jews would see these people as nothing but dogs and animals because they were half-breeds. So much so to where at the end of the story of the Good Samaritan, Jesus asked, who is your neighbor? The guy won't even say his name, and he said, the one that helped him, I guess. So that's kind of the whole thing with Gentiles, that they were scum. But yet, Jesus steps into this space, steps into the lowest place that he could go as the king of all of the earth, and washes his disciples' feet. Who does he wash the feet of? You see, he washes the feet of Peter, who Jesus later on is about to say, you're going to deny me 3 times. And Peter says, no, I won't. Jesus says, no, yes, you will. You're going to deny me. Peter didn't deserve the foot washing of Jesus, especially after so many things. He had spent so much time with Jesus. He was claiming for the first time in the world that Jesus was the Messiah. He walked on water. But ultimately, he's going to deny him. Jesus still washes his feet. Who else do we see? Judas. The person that is about to leave the room and get some money from some crooked people to sell out the person that he's been following for 3 years. Scum of the earth. Yet, Jesus stoops down below Judas to wash his feet. This is the last act of service that we see from Jesus before he dies on the cross. And I think Paul's words in Philippians 2 are so fitting. He says, who existing in the form of God did not consider equality with God as something to be exploited, but instead he emptied himself by assuming the form of a servant and taking on the likeness of humanity. So my question is, how are we serving others? Are we too busy shooting our wounded to stoop down below somebody that may not look like us or act like us or talk like us to serve them? Or are we riding on our high horse saying, no, I go to church every Sunday. I go to Unite on Saturday night. I go to all of these places. I do all of these things for Jesus. I don't have time to spend time with somebody that lives like that. But Matthew 28 says, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. The thing about making disciples is first you have to know somebody that doesn't know Jesus. So I know we want to spend all of this time around our Christian friends, and yes, we should do that. That's what the community in Acts was like. But sometimes we have to go outside of the Christian friends, the people that don't know anything about Jesus, and say, hey, I'm going to love you because that's what I'm commanded to do. I don't care how bad you are. I don't care what you do on the weekend. I don't care anything that's going on in your life. I'm going to love you because that's what I'm commanded to do. So as we leave here, we're going to go back into some worship. I was actually going to do an illustration. So they're trying to match Doug, but it didn't work out like that. Anyway, so we're going to do this mental illustration. The idea was basically to have a table in the front, and it was filled with sand. So in the story of the adulterous woman, we see that Jesus writes in the sand. So in your head, I want you to think of this table with sand. And think, if you know anything that you've done, or maybe you have treated somebody as if you were higher than them, and they did not deserve it, in your head, take right in the sand, whatever it was, to that person. The magical thing is that you can take it, wipe it, it disappears. That's the same thing that the blood of Jesus does for us. So we're going to do 3 more songs.